Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Monday, September 23rd, 2019, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Alright, well, in this video, we're going to talk about the good giants, and I bet you never heard of the good giants because all you've ever heard about are the bad giants, the cannibalistic giants. That's the only story you hear, whether it's from you know, Steve Quayle or L.A. Marzulli or whoever it is, and this whole Nephilim thread and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm not buying into all of that stuff exactly, but you can hear me on my channel. I go at it with L.A. Marzulli on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, the show that he does there, and L.A. Marzulli was the guest, and I got on there to tell him about how this whole cannibalistic giant story, where they come in the middle of the night and come and take your children and boil them in a pot and eat them and all. It's the oldest story, propaganda story, demonizing the enemy story that anybody ever heard of. So that's, Galena Canyon was the story that really straightened me out with this whole thing. And I did a video about it, The Towers of Silence, and that's from C.W. Saram's book, The First American, which is, basically the title of it, he's saying, and Saram was not happy with the whole American archaeological and anthropological scene, okay? He had a lot of criticisms of it, and this is the book he wrote to sort of bring things to light. He thought that Galena Canyon was being suppressed. So that's why he wrote about Galena Canyon, and if you didn't know about it, it's one of the probably one of the most major sites in the United States that you never heard of, okay? A canyon in New Mexico, 25 miles by 35 miles, I believe, or something like that, with these 500 towers, okay, of 25 to 30-foot stone towers, which the guy who first saw them called them castles, Torreones. And you never heard about it, okay? In this video here, I do on that chapter, and Saram is being sarcastic, okay, because you never heard of it. Frank C. Hibben was a archaeologist from the Museum of New Mexico, did an extensive archaeological study there, and nothing is heard about it. It's dismissed, and Saram put it in his book to illustrate that this was a very important story that's being dismissed, and it wasn't quite correct. So if you don't know about it, okay, I have this video on my channel. It's pretty popular. If you look at it, you'll see what I mean. And the people at Galena, as it turns out, were of sort of a different phenotype, apparently, because you had this modern article from 2007 with these university people, okay, talk about the Galena people from AD 1100, but by 1275 they were all gone. Again, another one of these peoples being eliminated in somewhere between 1200 and 1300 AD everywhere in the Americas for some reason. And in this article, it talks about these people, and I point out what they got wrong according to Frank C. Hibben's research, but in this it mentions, that these people were of a different phenotype, okay? You're right here. The skulls are flat on the back. So they're saying they're brachiocephalus, but every time they say they're brachiocephalus, it turns out that, they're really dolichocephalic, and they just don't want to say it, okay? They're talking about deformation occurring during infancy, which I'm not buying into, cradle boarding, etc., but they're talking about these strange skulls that these people had at Galena, and apparently, the research showed that they were like the Lovelock Cave people, which they say here to insult your intelligence and piss you off. The recovered remains of the inhabitants, although slightly more robust, were not beyond normal size parameters. Okay, so from watching the videos on my channel that I did all the research on the history of height. Yes, they're not beyond the normal size parameters by today's standards, but you can't measure it by today's standards. You have to measure it by people who apparently were living in somewhere between 1100 and 1275 AD, which would make him, as far as according to all the mainstream academics on the history of height, that human beings had not changed significantly in height since the Stone Age. That's their determination, and for some reason they were stopped growing, and they don't know why. That anybody of 6 foot or greater than 6 foot would be of unusual size for the time, and slightly more robust is a euphemism, gang. I mentioned this in previous videos. For bigger, bigger. You understand? So they don't know where these bigger people with weird skulls came from. Okay, this is the Lovelock Cave people. We're not talking about the Galena people, but I say the Galena people and the Lovelock people are the same people, and including the people at the Salmon Ruins also. These people that are from Lovelock Cave are probably from Hovenweep. This is identical construction to the Torreones in Galena Canyon, and also very similar to the funerary towers in Peru, strangely, which I did a video about as well. Okay, so according to the Humboldt Museum that houses the artifacts, this insulting our intelligence here by telling us they're slightly more robust. They're people of a different phenotype, of a different morphology that they have no history of or trace of. And the theories about Genghis Khan's army fighting its way down through the Americas and what, they have no evidence of any of these things. They have no way to prove any of these things. And the story that I go through on my channel about this whole propaganda, okay, that these cannibalistic giants was just a demonizing of the enemy. And even in the Old Testament, here's an article from some religious website here about the Old Testament and violence, Israel's holy war, the genocide of the giants. Okay, this is when Joshua went into the city there, was told by God to go in and kill everything, the women, children, animals, step on ants, whatever it is. They were there to kill all of the giants in this genocide of the giants. There's just somebody else talking about it. It was some Faith Life blog or whatever. Okay, and it's hard to explain this violence against the giants there in biblical times, whatever, but I'm telling you, it's nothing more than propaganda. People that love like the Silica, okay, that was the people. Let's read a little bit from this. Okay, according to Paiute oral history, the Silica, Saduga, Sale, Sai, are a legendary tribe whose mummified remains were allegedly discovered under 4 feet of guano by guano miners in what is known as Lovelock Cave near Lovelock, Nevada. And by the way, the guano miners destroyed most of the artifacts in the cave by their digging out the guano, which was fetching a premium in the early 1900s there for the war in Europe. All this munitions were made as an essential part of gunpowder, apparently. Although the cave had been mined since 1911, miners did not notify authorities until 1912. Yes, after everything had been destroyed, all the skeletons had been reduced to like tiny little bits. Miners destroyed many of the artifacts, but archaeologists were still able to retrieve 10,000 Paiute artifacts from the cave. Like the Paiute artifacts, how could they be the giants too? Okay, items include ducticoy sandals that were 15 inches big and baskets, several dating over 2,000 years. Okay, so again, with this whole thing, the Lovelock people were people, and the whole people in the area. They just weren't the people in the cave. Okay, so according to archaeologists, Silica literally means tool eaters. Okay, in the language of the Paiute Indians, tool is a fibrous water plant. In order to escape harassment, harassment from the Paiutes. The Silicas were said to have lived on rafts made of tulle on the lake. So they discount this whole legend and everything else in that mainstream. But the religious people take it seriously. Obviously, the native people take it seriously. Whatever. And I'm telling you, I don't care if it's a Paiute or anybody else in this world. It's the oldest thing in the book to demonize the enemy by making them into these horrible, terrible people. And after hundreds of years of this propaganda, okay, these people they come in the middle of the night and eat your children cannibals. It's a bunch of junk, okay? And I give the proof for it in my stories of the good giants, okay? And, I said they're tool eaters. Why not man eaters or baby eaters or children eaters or tool eaters? I mean, they sound like pussycats, you know? Not these giant monsters, whatever. You make these people into being they're only maybe slightly bigger than them or whatever, bigger in size, its overall size, which is, anomalous to the mainstream. And that's why they don't want to tell a story. And that's why they buried the story of Galena Canyon. Okay. So, just as an aside here, there was this lady who wrote this book for a kiddie book, The Good Giants and the Bad Pukwudgies. Okay, this is oral histories of the native tribe, the Wampanoag tribe, which was an Algonquin tribe on Nantucket Island, and it's a story about good giants, the Winnipesaukee Indians. Okay. Is the lady who commented. Just about every culture has legends of fairies, elves, or other little people. In this story, legends of the Wampanoags, a tribe of Algonquin people who lived in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and also on Long Island. The story about King Mangatuxi and the Montaukets were also Algonquin or descended from the Algonquins or whatever, but. Here's a story of a good giant about Nantucket that you never heard here, and you go through it here. So basically, this giant, I think his name was Moshop. The legend goes that Moshop had been walking and traveling for a long time, and he came to the end of the land, like where Cape Cod is, and he was very tired, and he decided to lay down. And he lay on his side, and the legend says that the shape of his body is what created the elbow shape of Cape Cod where he laid down, and his body made depressions that then became lakes. While he was sleeping, he had sand in his moccasins, and he threw them off into the water that became Martha's Vineyard, and one that landed further out was Nantucket. Okay, so I'm just showing you that not all the native legends about giants are bad. Here's obviously a completely mythological one, or maybe related to a true story. We don't know, because there seems to be many stories of large chieftains who were good guys that you never heard about. So just to show you that there's these legends here. It's not only these bad and no mention of cannibalism or anything in there, right? So, and here on a very early video of mine, Ancient New England White Stone Culture, which we found out a lot about white stone in the New England, Aboriginal people's ancestors' culture. And at Mallory there, where I did my research in Connecticut, and up among the stone walls, there were many pure white, large stones in prominent areas that you could see quite clearly when the foliage was, low in the fall, or, going into winter when the leaves drop, or into spring, where you could see these things at great distances. So, in any case, I read about King Mangatuxi from the Montauk tribe, and if you're an old subscriber, you heard this story a million times, but here's where I originally read from it, from a book from the Library of Congress by Rutenberg, the Tribes of the Hudson Valley, 1750, okay, and he recounts the story, which if you even do a search here on the internet, you won't find it, or Canoe Place, the canal that this giant king built. Okay, you won't find anything about a Canoe Place. Look it up. You can't find anything on this. You have to go back to reference material like this. But here I read from it, and you'll see. What I
More than
say?
2 centuries ago, a canal was made there by the Indians for the purpose of passing their canoes from one bay to the other. That is, across the island from Mecox Bay to Peconic Bay. Although the trench has been in great measure filled up, yet its remains are still visible and partly flowed at high water. It was constructed by Mangatuxi, or Long Knife, who then reigned over the nation of Montauk, a chief of gigantic form, proud and despotic in peace and terrible in war. But although a tyrant of his people, he protected them from their enemies and commanded their respect for his savage virtues. He sustained his power not less by the resources of his mind than by the vigor of his arm. An ever watchful policy guided his counsels, prepared for every exigency. Not even aboriginal sagacity could surprise his canton. To facilitate communication around the seat of his dominion, for the purpose not only of defense but of annoyance, he constructed this canal, which remains a monument of his genius. The praises of Mangatuxi are still chanted in Aboriginal verse to the winds that howl around the eastern extremity of the island. Okay?
So Rutenberg is referring to this research done by Schoolcraft and these original stories, and there you have it of King Mangatuxi. He's a fierce guy. He was gigantic in form. Okay, and here goes more that where in the Southwest it seemed, and elsewhere in the world, it seemed it was necessary to wipe out these giant hominid type of humanoid peoples. They integrated into the population of the Northeast, and from the Adena and Hopewell into the tribes of the Northeast. And as I go through in the research that I did on the history of height, where we see that the Plains Indians at 1800 are among the largest people in the world for some reason, and they could never explain why. Just they would grow more, in this size than anybody else in the world, when people are average size between 5'3" and 5'7" inches tall. So that's very short. So look, so he's just another story, and I recount from this book from the Library of Congress. And as I said, you do a search for King Mangatuxi and the Montauk people, and you never hear anything about it. You hear about, I think, his sons, one of his sons or his grandsons there, but that's about it. And they don't go into any more of the story because he was gigantic in form. Okay, but apparently he wasn't the only one. Okay, and in this 1890 New York Times article, Race of Giants Discovered in New York. And I'll look at the picture here a little bit, because these people are clearly, and I'm sure they would say they're brachiocephalus, but they look dolichocephalus to me. They look like long skulls in there, and apparently they were of large size, and they're talking about it in this New York Times actual article from the time, and this is 1890, after the Cardiff Giant, which I went over on my channel in a video. Okay, remember the Cardiff Giant was the one of the biggest hoaxes ever perpetrated in 1869 by a bunch of businessmen. They came up with the whole religious story. We go over it from Saram's book too. Okay, the cockamamie story that they made up is a cover story because they're just rapacious businessmen who are looking to make a buck off people. Other people in the country were doing it with similar stone-cut giants too. It's just the time and the age, and so based on these couple of hoaxes, we're not supposed to believe any recounting of giants is legitimate at all. Okay, but that was in 1869. This is 1890, so I think we're well past that. and they're reporting on this. The article states that about 50 skeletons of Indians were found in an Indian graveyard near Edgewater Avenue in Pleasantville, with many of them measuring 7 feet tall and one measuring 8 feet tall. NewYorkTimes.com reports the first lot of skeletons unearthed was about 1,000 yards from the city post office and embraced 8 bodies, closely laid together in a deep chamber, snugly packed with tortoise, oyster, and clam shells. One of this number had bead and shells decoration, which in its extreme height points to the fact that it must have been the powerful old Chief Kiowags, whose descendants still own farms along the shore. Okay, it was in this time in 1890. Okay, so powerful old Chief Kiowags. Okay, belonging to him. Okay, the 8-footer one. All right, so look, another story of a guy who wasn't a bad guy, he was a big, fierce guy or whatever. Okay, so look, just another native retelling of a rather large, guy who was a good guy. Okay, so here's the actual article, and these are Paleolithic skeletons. Okay, and the people who went out there, Messrs. Risley and Farr, the owners of the land, gave to the Anthropological Association of the University of Pennsylvania the right to search for relics on their land. These researchers have been watched by thousands of people with great interest. Besides weapons of war, savage ornamental war decorations, and numerous valuable shells, stones, and over 50 skeletons have been exhumed. Dr. Charles R. Abbott, curator of the association, is continuing the search, and the skeletons are to be shipped to the university at once. They run in size from a small child to several obscene feet in, 7 feet in height, and one supposed to be an old medicine man, Warneck, must have been at least 8 feet in height, so not a medicine man, okay, so 8 feet in height. Okay, that's absolutely huge for their time. Okay, the comparison that the Humboldt Museum gives is a disingenuous one. You can't measure it by today's standards. You have to measure it by the standards of the time. Anybody can see that. It's very scientific. You understand that what they're saying is misleading, purposely. Okay, they don't keep any skeletons at the museum. They're reburied again because of an act of Congress, and we'll never get to know the history of it again. This is all humankind history. It's not just the Native Americans. I'm sorry. It's just not. Okay, so about 50 students were on the ground this morning, continuing their search until stopped by rain. The citizens gazed in silent wonder on these relics of a race that at one time ruled the land. For 7 miles along the shore can be seen large mounds of clam and oyster shells left here by Indians who used to congregate by hundreds to open oysters for winter food. And it is near those shell mounds that the great number of skeletons have been taken up. In some instances, weapons of war made of stone and flint have been found lying close beside some exceedingly large skeletons. The relics will be put on an exhibition in a museum at University of Philadelphia, which cannot be found today. And here in this article at Gaia online, giant skeletons have been found buried across America. They sort of focus on Jim Vieira here, who contributes to the article here. It's by the Gaia staff, okay? There's Cahokia there, just absolutely gigantic mound, temple mound, different than the Adena and Hopewell. These are the temple mound builders, okay? So talking about Jim Vieira, I just want to read a little bit to you. Okay, discoveries of giant skeletons were found all over the northeast, okay? You know where all the stone walls are, okay? That are inexplicable stone walls that the Native Americans never claimed were theirs and belonged to somebody else. From Martha's Vineyard in Deerfield Valley, Massachusetts, to Vermont and upstate New York. This is where all these giant skeletons are found. Other reports of the discovery of buried giants were also found in the South, Midwest, and West Coast, including New Mexico as well. I have lists of them. I have access to some good reference sites that I can read any sort of article on them from the past. Okay, so in the Ohio River Valley report from the local paper was backed up by the Scientific American found bodies of several giants buried under a 10-foot tall mound. One female skeleton was found holding a 3.5-foot long child. Another of the giant skeleton was buried in a clay coffin, and engraved stone tablet was also recovered. This particular mound was 64 feet long and by 35 feet wide. The Chickasaw Mound in Arkansas is another instance of the uncovering of a giant skeleton under similar circumstances. The 12 square mile mound had its name taken from the chief of the Shawnee tribe, who was essentially known to be a giant with incredible strength. Chief Chickasaw lived in that area of Arkansas, and when the mound was uncovered, the skeleton of a massive human was found. Subsequently, other skeletons up to 10 feet tall were unearthed in the same area, all with similar burial artifacts found with them. Some reports claim the length of the skeleton's legs to be 5 feet alone. Okay, so it's very interesting to me about this, Chief Chickasaw. And when you hear about him, he's another one of these good giants. There's no cannibalism mentioned or anything like that. Okay, and it's a Stone Builders, Mound Builders, and Giants of Ancient America blog, your daily giant here. Okay, so today's Daily Giant comes from the Evening Telegraph, December 15th, 1870. A long, detailed, and intriguing account is given. The title reads, "The Giant Race, the Indian Mound, Chickasaw, human skeletons 8 and 10 feet in height, relics of a former race." From the article, 2 miles west of Barfield Point in Arkansas County, Arkansas, on the east bank of the lovely stream called the Penobscot River, stands an Indian mound, some 25 feet high and about an acre in area at the top. The mound derives its name from Chickasaw, a chief of the Shawnee tribe who lived and died and was buried there. This chief was one of the last race of hunters who lived in that beautiful region and who once peopled it quite thickly. Okay, like we find out from Charles C. Mann's book, 1490, peopled quite thickly until the settlers and colonists came, and then there were hardly any, and that's what they thought it was like, and it wasn't. Aunt Kitty Williams, who now resides there, relates that Chickasaw would frequently bring in for sale at one time as much as 20 gallons of pure honey in deerskin bags slung to his back. He was always a friend to the whites, a man of gigantic stature and Herculean strength. He was buried at the foot of the mound on which he had lived by his tribe, most of whom departed for the nation immediately after performing his funeral rites. Okay, so he's very similar to the story of King Mongatuxi there, except he was friendly with whites. He was around when whites were, whereas King Mongatuxi was there somewhere in the 13th or 14th century or something like that. Chickasaw was perfectly honest and the best informed chief of his tribe. A number of years ago, making an excavation into the rear foot of Chickasaw's mound, a portion of the gigantic human skeleton was found. The men who were digging becoming interested, unearthed the entire skeleton, and from the measurements given us by reliable parties, the frame of the man whom it belonged could not have been less than 8 or 9 feet in height. Under the skull, which slipped easily over the head of our informant, who we will all here state is one of our best citizens, was found a peculiarly shaped earthen jar, resembling nothing in the way of Indian pottery which has before been seen by them. It was exactly the shape of the round-bodied, long-necked carafes or water decanters, a specimen of which may be seen on Gaston's dining table. A material of which the vase was made was a peculiar kind of clay. Oops. Okay. Shoot. Peculiar kind of clay, and the workmanship was very fine. The belly or body of it was ornamented with figures or hieroglyphs consisting of a correct delineation of human hands, parallel to each other, open palms outward and running up and down the base, the wrist to the base and the fingers towards the neck. Maybe hand talk, Indian hand talk. Since that time, wherever an excavation has been made in Chickasaw County in the neighborhood of Mound, similar skeletons have been found, and under the skull of every one were found similar funeral vases, almost exactly like the one described. There are now in the city several of the vases and portions of the huge skeletons. Okay, so they're measuring the thigh bones. They're saying 9 to 10 feet tall. I mean, it's absolutely huge for the time where people average in height between 5'3" and 5'7". Okay, so another tale of a good giant. No mention of cannibalism in there. No mention of that with the guy from New York State, not this guy from Arkansas. So I'm getting the picture that the whole story about the Lovelock Cave people was nothing more than propaganda, okay? Like the propaganda from the Old Testament, okay? And this genocide of the giants, it came time in the whatever Homo sapiens shared living space with these people who are obviously leftovers. And why were they targeted? Why were they killed? Because they were smarter, okay? We recall from my videos on my channel about the Hopewell, okay, the Hohokam, okay, the survivors of an advanced race. They had etching, they etched with acid 400 or 500 years before armorers did in Europe, and Franz Ulbrecht did with his painting or whatever. They had advanced, and Saram had questioned how they did all this canal engineering and whatnot without the use of a surveyor's scope. Okay, just impossible sort of hydraulics that these people were working on. Okay, and the people from the Lovelock Canyon, okay, were the Lovelock Cave, were the same people from Galena Canyon, the same people from Hope and Weep and the Salmon Ruins, etc. This is what I'm saying here, and this whole propaganda against the giants has been going on here in Europe, as I went over in Jack and the Beanstalk in one of my videos, okay, and in the Old Testament, whatever they say about the man eating and cannibal, this is the oldest propaganda in the book to demonize an enemy, okay, and make them look like something savage. And these people at Galena Canyon is what did it for me, okay, because the people at Galena Canyon seemed very refined. They had these very nice homes, okay, that were decorated on the inside, and I was comparing them in one of my videos to the Watusi, who had a similar design form, who just happened to be, giant-sized people, 7 foot tall or better, okay, and I was saying whether there was maybe a connection there or whatnot, but you have these 500 Toriones at Galena Canyon, and here's the Watusi lady, okay, 7 foot tall. You notice the shape of her head, okay, all right, from the tribe of Watusi, which is changed into the Tutsi tribe now, and you can't find an honest answer about any of this stuff about them. Okay, I compared them to the people in Galena Canyon, okay, but if you haven't seen the video of the people of Galena Canyon, these people lived in nice homes. They were decorated. They had architectural design elements inside their home that were utilitarian for, their corn crop and whatnot. And just, it seemed highly unlikely that these people were cannibalistic. Okay, and they were genocided, as reported in even a later article that goes into it. Okay, and they were of a different phenotype, like the people from Lovelock. They were slightly more robust. Okay, and the people of Lovelock were exterminated around this time as well. So, and definitely they came from Hope and Weep, because Hope and Weep didn't have the same history. They found these towers and castles. It's called Hope and Weep Castle, okay, like Torreon in Galena County, same exact architectural styles, okay, but they say that the ancient Pueblo people are the ones who built them, and I say equivocally